Mr. Kip Sorensen, I got to admit, man, I'm a little sick of seeing your face. So the fact that we have to do this 2 days later after I've seen your face for a week, your kids, your
Yeah.
wife, yeah, for sure. You, not so much.
Mm, yeah. Well, that's what I get as you've learned over the week. You might just want to reference me as Asia's husband versus Kip, because that's usually
That's
people
your
get
new
it.
nickname.
They end up
That's
liking
your
my
new nickname.
spouse more than me. Yeah.
And it's actually, I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong, but it's actually very indicative and telling of the relationship with my wife as well. People will come out to my house, for example, hey, Ryan, I want to meet with you, or I want to do a podcast, or want to document you, or whatever. And they'll come out here. And, the first time they'll come out for me. The second time is all about my wife. It's all about my kids. It has nothing to do with me. So we're in very similar boats, man.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I don't know why. I feel like teasing people about the secret Cancun gathering. There you go. I just did it.
like just letting them know that we had a secret gathering in
Yeah.
Cancun, but not telling
Yeah.
them at all what it was about.
Yeah. And if you guys follow Mr. Mickler on the socials, that's at Ryan Mickler, you'll see a photo of some pretty badass individuals all
No
coming
doubt.
together in Cancun. And it is
Yeah,
pretty
no
awesome.
doubt. We'll
Yeah.
let you guys know. I'm not going to keep you in the dark too long, but we'll let you guys know. But yeah, we got some things coming up. Also, look, I got to tell you, I noticed that you conveniently overlooked my text that I sent yesterday. I will be expecting PayPal of somewhere between $10 to $50. I can't remember what we settled
Yeah.
on,
I love how
but
you
you do
forgot
owe
that it
me
was
some money.
$10. Yeah. I do owe you some money. So I betted on Dustin Poirier, mostly
But
because
not
I
hold on.
like him.
Not only did you bet on him, you said Oliveira doesn't use jujitsu.
I know. And and he ended up submitting Dustin
So
as
that's at
well.
least worth twice the bet that we had settled on, I think.
Oh, I see. So that's how it went from $10 to 50. I saw the
Only if
text in the morning. I'm
only if
like,
it goes in
50. Who
my
said 50?
no, you said 50. You're like, why not make it 50? I'm
What?
like, done. And you're like, no, better keep it at 10. That's true. You don't remember saying
uh,
that?
okay. I may have said that. I may have said
Yeah.
that.
We
All
did go
right.
back to 10, but I didn't watch the entire fight. I just watched the end, and yeah, I mean, once he climbed on his back, it was over.
I know. Yeah, it was a done deal. No, he's amazing. So I don't want to downplay. I did go for Dustin though. So, and
You know the
did you see the
what?
girls fight?
No, I
Oh
didn't. I
my
saw the
goodness.
end of it, and that shocked the world. There was no way in a million years that should have happened.
They just toe and toe just banged. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
was
man, it's
awesome.
pretty. The thing I was gonna say that I like about Oliveira, and I don't follow it as closely probably as you do, but I mean, the guy's not a newcomer. Like he's not some
No.
up and coming newcomer. He's been around for probably what 10 years or so,
Yep.
and the fact that he gets better and better in a sport that after 10 years, you should at that point be like peaking or you're past your peak at that point, and he
Yeah.
continues to get better, which is pretty incredible.
Well, and Dustin's that way too, man. Dustin's been in
True,
this
that's
game for
true.
a long time. I always find that interesting. You look at most sports, right? And you're talking 30s, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, they're up for retirement. MMA, not the case, actually. That's like your prime years is your mid 30s. It's very interesting.
Well, I
But
think
yeah,
there's a lot to the sport that goes beyond just the physical nature of it. Like so I train with a bunch of guys here in Maine. One of the guys is Joe Parody, and I think he's 65 years old, and he's a strong man. He's a very active. He's a strong man. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt world champion. He competed
yeah,
again at Worlds just what
just
was that 3 or
recently.
4 weeks ago? Yeah,
Yeah.
tore his bicep. I mean, the guy's he's an incredible guy. But like when you think about training as me as a 45-year-old man, and I'm not the strongest ever. I'm not like, but I'm fairly physical. I'm active. I'm strong. And then to train with a 65-year-old man in jujitsu and a 65-year-old man who, by all intents and purposes, should not be able to beat the shit out of you does. It just goes to show
There's
how,
something
I mean,
there.
strength plays it, sure, but the technical factor and aspect of it and the intelligence and the cunningness of it is also a huge, huge factor in it.
Yeah. Man, I love our sport. Such a
Absolutely.
great sport. Just
All right,
for
so
that,
we're
just in that example alone.
100%, 100%. And
Yeah.
I wish, I was thinking about it even in high school. I played football, I played baseball, I wrestled for a couple of years. And looking back, I really enjoyed my time playing football. Mostly that was my favorite sport. I just wish there was jujitsu when I was in high school. And there could have been, maybe I didn't see it or overlooked it. I just wish it was more of what it is today back then. Cause I would have,
Yeah.
if I would have known, I think I would have done that, because you can do it forever.
I know. Yeah. It's like a lifetime sport.
It is. All right. So we're fielding questions from our Facebook group. Kip shot me a message. I was on the plane last night coming back from our top secret trip in Cancun. Yeah. And he sent me a text. He said, "Hey, we need questions." So I posed that in the Facebook group. So we got some good ones today, man. Let's crank through them.
Yeah, we'll soften up with these early questions. So Elijah Palmer, best reading for a soon-to-be father. Your recommendation, sir.
So I saw some of these questions. This is one that I saw. And I think what guys are asking for when they see questions ask questions like this is,
how do I prepare,
the perfect,
right?
Right. But they're looking for the perfect book on fatherhood. And there are, like, my good friend Larry Hagner wrote a book. Eric Davis wrote a book called Raising Men, I believe it's called. There's another one called Raising Modern Day Knights that Bedros, who is out there in Cancun with us, is a big advocate for. But I don't think it's really any different than what you would read outside of fatherhood. So over your left shoulder, Kip, you've got Sovereignty, The Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Men. You've also got The Boy Crisis by Dr. Warren Farrell, I see. There's other books you would typically think of when it comes to masculinity, like Wild at Heart by John Eldridge, who's been on the podcast. Stephen Mansfield, who was in Cancun with us, Mansfield Book of Manly Men, Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership. So you don't need a book on fatherhood necessarily. It can serve its purpose. But if you start to look at the books that are the classics and some of the books that are even modern day kind of classics, like Extreme Ownership, 12 Rules for Life, these sorts of things, you can translate that over into fatherhood. It isn't any different than the way you might lead a team at work, than you might lead yourself, if you're open and receptive to that. And so that's the point I'm making, is that you don't need a book on fatherhood as much as you need a book on how to be the best possible man that you can be. And that's why even Sovereignty, and I know I'm biased, I get it, I understand, so it seems self-serving, but if you read Sovereignty and you apply what we're telling, especially that fourth or fifth part of the book where it talks about the battle plan, you're going to be a better father. 100%. You're going to be a better father. So I don't know that we need to get too wrapped up in, what are all these little details? And especially when they're newborns, what are you going to learn? How to wipe their ass better?
Yeah. But you showing up as a husband and you showing up as a strong man in your life, that's going to help you become a better father, even if the baby's, a month old.
And so what I would say, and this might be contrary to popular opinion, is learn how to focus on yourself, not at the baby's expense, not at your wife's expense, but learn how to focus on you. Because really at this point, you've got about like 2 to 3 years of dialing and reining yourself in before that baby becomes very, very impressionable, especially if you. I was going to say, especially if it's a boy. I don't know if that's true, but becomes very, very impressionable with you. And there's a point in time, especially with boys, correct me if you think I'm wrong, Kip, where our little boys switch from mama's boys to daddy's boys. Totally. And you got about a 4-year window before that happens, I would say. And
your daughters do that as well. Your daughters, it's a different window, but your daughters will do that as well. But it's the analogy that the tall tale sign of it is when your daughter starts asking why she can't marry you when she gets older. Like there's this transition, and my 8-year-old can't get it past her mind why she can't marry me. She thinks it's cool. That's completely wrong for her not to be able to get married to me when she gets older. Which I love it, man. Which is very, very meaningful.
Yeah, for sure. So look, I gave you a couple books on fatherhood. I think that's important. I'm not saying it isn't, and I'm not dismissing that, but really I want you to take the next 2, 3, 4 years and just sharpen your own saw. right? Sharpen your own blade. So read Extreme Ownership, read 12 Rules for Life, read Sovereignty, read Man's Search for Meaning, read As a Man Thinketh, read Wild at Heart, read Iron John. I mean, these are all books that if you haven't read all of those yet, read those. And by default, you're going to become a better father for sure.
I love it. It just crossed my mind. You know what we should do in the next, at least the next meetup that here in Utah, I'm being selfish here. We should have you sign a couple books of sovereignty, and guys that RSVP, we could give those out at a meetup.
Yeah. I'm all on board. I've got 200 sitting in our store right now, ready to be signed and shipped out. So if you want one, you can go to the store.
Kind of a cool way. Yeah. Kind of a cool way to promote local meetups. So
yeah, okay, for sure. I'll do that.
All right. Andrew, Chastian. Sorry, man. What can I do as an individual if I feel like my church leadership is losing the courage of their convictions? By the way, it's really interesting. We've had flavors of this question quite a bit lately, but anyhow.
Well, I think the reason that we're experiencing that, and I felt that too, admittedly, is because the reaction to COVID is very polarizing. And I'm not sure that's where this question comes from. But when church leadership in our congregation, my congregation, is at odds with what I believe about freedom and liberty and personal responsibility, then I think that's weakness and that's cowering, when I believe Christians should not be cowering. They should be standing up and rising up and fighting for truth and liberty and freedom, because that's what advances, I think, the Christian cause.
Yeah.
Communism doesn't advance Christianity. Like,
it's the opposite.
Exactly. It hinders it.
Yeah. There's no individual responsibility in communism.
Exactly. So, and isn't that what Christ believes in, right? Is that we're all going to be held accountable at some point for the work that we've done here in this existence. So what should you do? Be the kind of leader that you wish your leaders would be. And I'm not going to say that you're to the point where you need to find a different church, although that's certainly a consideration. I'm not going to say that that's the point you're at, but you should at a minimum be stepping up. You should be rallying together the men in your church congregation. You should be meeting at least once a week outside of your church Sunday meeting or Saturday, whenever you might have it, depending on your faith. Maybe you guys get together on a Tuesday or a Wednesday night. And if I were going to do it, here's how I would structure it. Every other Wednesday night, just hypothetically, or morning, it doesn't matter. Just get together. That's all I'm saying. But every other Wednesday would be spiritually based. So guys, we're going to read scripture. We're in this, we're in Mark right now, and we're reading these passages, and then we're going to get together and we're going to discuss, and there has to be a moderator.
Mark?
Yeah. So what's that?
Kip, I said, what's Mark? I was just trying to be funny. Sorry, guys. Keep going.
I'm like, wait, I'm confused. So read us. Okay, Kip, read whatever you want to read, whatever book you read out of, read that. I don't care. Okay. But then it's
I don't read the Bible. I read Sovereignty.
And you also are going to get struck
by lightning burns my building down.
Right. Yeah, that's right. So, read scripture, and then on a weekly basis, you guys get together, discuss that, have a moderator where you can keep it on track, because it can get off track. And then every other week is maybe not spiritually aligned, but just you guys getting together. Hey, we're going to go to serve somebody in the community. We're going to go move their stuff. They're moving into town or they're moving out of town, so we're going to go serve. Or, hey guys, this weekend, we're actually just going to go bowling. Like I got 5 lanes for us. We're all going to go bowling tonight, and we're not going to get shit faced. We're going to be here. We're going to enjoy each other's time and company together, and we're going to do our thing together. And you be the kind of leader that you need your church leadership to be. That's the point. And when there's an abdication of responsibility, then it's it becomes your responsibility to step into that and do what you need to be done. Yeah. And now there's an exception to that. When when your ability to step into that leadership and your ability to do it is hampered, frowned upon, restricted, okay, at that point, that becomes an issue for me. But I made a tweet the other day and I said, I've learned to really appreciate the ineptness of others, because that's what creates opportunity for me. Yeah. So if your church leaders are inept, awesome, good. Now you can step into leadership and you can be the kind of leader that you would want for yourself, and the kind of leader, I promise you, if you're thinking that, there's other people in your congregation who are thinking that. So step up, not to like war with the current church leadership, but to support, to help, maybe even to show as an example of what real leadership actually looks like in the wake of somebody who might be maybe exercising some cowardice.
Yeah.
I have responsibility.
I think most guys don't do this, Ryan, because they think that they need the authority of a position or a title or whatever to be able to take initiative in an example like that. Like I even see it, like even in the workplace, it's like, oh, well, I would like to help the team, or I'd like to do these things, but I that's not my title. And so I don't have the authority. And I usually push back and say, well, then it's perfect, because first off, you shouldn't have influence over people because of authority. You should have influence over people because you've convinced them or you've enlisted them in what you're doing. That's the ideal state anyway. And you don't need necessarily a title always to be able to take an initiative in an example. Thoughts?
Well, it's interesting that you're bringing this up, because I'm in the process of writing a book, and you use two words, influence and authority, that I actually hit upon very deeply in the book itself. And so
it's authority, because of me. Yeah,
it is. I got that from you. And so you're definitely going to be in the credits, and you're going to receive a royalty check each month as well.
So, I just want to point this out. He has said this in a recorded session. What's the episode is this?
When I get my $10 from you, that's right. Then we'll worry about that. Yeah. So authority is granted from above, right? So yeah. in the faith aspect, it's granted by God. In a work setting, it's granted by your boss. It could be expressed or it could be implied, but it's granted from above. Influence is granted from below. And I'm not talking about the worth of people. I'm just saying that those you wish to lead would give you their authority, their influence, right? Yeah. But here's the interesting thing about authority. If I said, for example, that my authority to lead my family is derived from God, but one of my children didn't acknowledge God as the authority, that's a problem, right? And so that now we're talking about reputation, or probably more something closer to credibility, right? Like, is that a credible authority? But I'm also talking a lot about in this book as to whether or not you need to have the title before you lead. And the answer is most certainly you do not. Leadership comes before the title. The title, which is the authority, is derived from influence and credibility. Yeah. So once you're influential enough and you hold enough weight and credibility with not only those above you, a boss or God or whoever it may be, and those below you, your team leader, a son, a daughter, then that title begins to match what you're doing as leadership. All this to say that I talk a lot about this in the book. All this to say that leadership comes before the title. You lead first, and then the title, it actually may or may not be granted. It doesn't matter, but leadership comes first. And the only exception to that is when what you're doing is antithetical to the organization that you're part of. So explain. if I'm just trying to think of a extreme example, if I'm part of the Nazi party, for example, and all of a sudden I start to go rogue and don't believe in the Nazi party and instead believe in freedom and truth and liberty and the rights of individuals. Okay, well then obviously I can no longer support that organization, and I'm going to rebel. I'm going to be a traitor. And there's righteous, there's times where that's righteous. The example I would just gave you would be one of those times. And there's times where that's not righteous. So that's a different conversation. But the point that I'm making is that if you're in alignment with your church leadership as far as leading, then you can continue to operate within that organization. But if there comes a point in time where what you want to do and how you want to lead is antithetical to what they're suggesting, then that might be a time where you consider leaving that organization. But I'm not saying go there. What I'm saying is that as long as what you're trying to do is in alignment with what your church preaches, then you have not only the opportunity, but the obligation to step up, to lead, to do what you think is right.
That's great. Byron Clark, what actions and steps should men take now to have security for their businesses and family with regards to the 6.8% inflation rate and is suspected to only increase?
Yeah, I mean, 6.8 is high. I've seen it anywhere up to 10%. And we don't really know what the cap is at this point with everything that's being proposed. I mean, there's a problem when I think I read a report, and I don't want to use the numbers because I can't remember right offhand, but I was looking at a report yesterday, and we spent 100%, we spent 200% of what, let me back up. I'm trying to say this correctly. The government spent, we didn't spend. The government spent 200% in the first quarter of this year relative to what it took in income tax revenue. And I don't know the exact number. You guys can go look it up.
Kids with a credit card.
Right. And so if you did that as the patriarch of your home, don't you think the credit card companies would be coming after you? Don't you think somebody would show up and take your car and repo your car? Like, don't you think the bank would be calling to secure the house? Like, that's what would happen. There's real world consequences for that as you and as an individual. When the government does it, what do? They print more money. And that's where inflation, some of it, not all of it, but that's part of why we have such high inflation. Okay. So to your question, what can you do as a business? Is that what he said? Or just what can you do?
Like what actions and steps can we do to secure our businesses and our families?
Yeah. I mean, very simply with a business, just come up with be innovative, come up with new products and features.
Be valuable, right?
Be valuable. Yeah. Consider raising your prices. You know, our prices went up, for example, with the Iron Council. That is not only because we're adding additional value, but because the cost of living does go up over 6 years. That's the last time we had a price increase on this thing. So that's part of it. But continue to be innovative, continue to add value, continue to look for what the market is requesting, and then meet that need, and that won't be as an issue. Personally, I would suggest that you stop spending so much money. Yeah. You know, this is probably not the time to be reckless with your spending. Instead, and also it's not the time to be putting it and having it solely in your bank account. Because if your bank account's getting 0.2% and inflation is 10%, you're inevitably losing money to inflation. The devaluation of the dollar. But if you can invest intelligently, and I'm not going to tell you where to invest, that's for another conversation. But if you can invest in building, and you can invest in your business, and you can invest in mutual funds, other people's businesses, and you can invest in crypto and all these other things, then you are going to keep pace with, if not outpace, which is the goal, what inflation is. I don't know that I would say that you need to be super hyper concerned with paying off debt right now. I don't know that I would do that, as far as, unless you're, overextended. I would say make the minimum payments and retain that money, invest that money. That's probably the better play. There's a whole slew of reasons you wouldn't do what I just said, and that has less to do with the math and more to do with you as a person and your personality and your spending habits and how good you are with money. But that's a consideration. And just be smart. Like, don't just keep your money. Don't spend exorbitant amounts of money on things, and just be intelligent. That's it. Be innovative, be intelligent. And you should have been doing that. We've been talking about it for 6 years. You should have been doing it for decades now at this point. If you're behind the curve, don't say, well, I can't do it now. Just start now, so that when this happens again in 10 years, and it will, you're ready for it and you don't have to ask questions like these.
Keith Chizinski, Ryan Mickler, I'm debating a career change and would like to know your thoughts. I've maxed out my growth in my current company and probably my industry. So I'd like to know more about how to make a career pivot.
Okay, so you've maxed out your potential growth and income in your current line of work, and you're wondering about making a pivot. I don't know that I would make that pivot right now, but what I personally would do and what I actually did is I found something that I was at least somewhat interested in and started to pursue that on the side. So for me, it was the Order of Man podcast. I launched that in 2015, not really, frankly, with the goal of starting what we've created at this point, 6 years later, almost 7 years later now. But really just with the goal of having this outlet that would help me be more efficient as a father and a husband and a leader in my community and a business owner. Gradually over time, it turned into what we're creating here. So if you're capped out where you are, then there's other avenues that you need to explore. And what's beautiful about this is that you have a particular set of skills, whatever that looks like for you. I don't know what industry you're in, that has primed you for exploration in different areas. So for me, my ability to talk with other people, my ability to handle and manage money. Also, what I was doing when I did my financial planning practice towards the end of my financial planning career is I was making CDs and handing them out to people. It was an audio CD, handing them out to people. And it was basically our first conversation recorded, and I would give them to people. And so that way it improved my closing ratio because the people that I started meeting with, they were already qualified.
Better prepared.
Exactly. Yeah. So my closing ratios went up, but that's really where I got introduced to this whole audio phenomenon. Then it turned into a podcast, and then for the financial planning practice, and then it became what you're listening to today. So there might be some avenues that you can explore. One easy avenue is, let's just hypothetically say you're in the financial planning space. You've been relatively successful, sounds like. You've been in the business for however long. You're capped out, which means that you've advanced to that point, and you're probably pretty decent at whatever that thing is. One great way to build some additional revenue is, instead of looking forward, turn around. Because there are dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of people behind you that want to know how to get to where you got. And there might be some opportunity for some coaching and consulting work in your current space for the individuals who want to get to where you currently are. That's a very easy way to do it. So I'll give you an example. Yeah. In the financial planning field, I had a couple of guys I really admired and respected in the business, perpetually creating income, creating wealth, growing their businesses, helping their clients. These guys were getting referrals and they were getting called and doing very, very well. I was really struggling. So I reached out to these guys and I said, hey, will you teach me what you know? And they said, yeah, we'll teach you, and we'll go on calls with you, and we'll partner with you, and we'll split our revenue 50-50. I was a little intimidated by that at first because it was hard to acknowledge that when I wasn't making very much money, that now I'm going to have to split 50% of it. But we all know that 50% of zero is still zero. So I wanted more. I realized, okay, this is a great opportunity for me to partner with these guys. And they had their own financial planning practice over here that they were doing. And they were partnering with me on my own calls. So I would make calls and get referrals in my business, and they would come in and I would split revenue with them. It was great for me because I learned from them, and it was great for them because they had ancillary revenue that they didn't have access to before. So that's a very easy way that a lot of people overlook. If you have an expertise or an experience or a passion or a set of skills like we're talking about here, there's like thousands of people behind you that would pay to learn what those things are. Very easy way to do it.
The only thing that comes to mind is like, why are you're obviously an expert at what you do. If you've kind of maxed your growth in your company and your industry, I would ask why, like, what is it that made you so great? And what is that skill? And then how do those skills transcend to other areas that you might be interested in? Right. Like I think I'm a good example of that. I'm in the IT industry. One might argue and think, oh, well, I'm good at technology. Well, actually, that's not really what I'm really good at. It's these soft skills aspects of technology that I'm really good at, which ironically transcends to a whole lot of other things. So I would get present on what do you bring to the table that's superior, that has allowed you to succeed, and then how can that translate to other industries and or jobs or responsibilities.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So let me riff on what you just said. So one of the things that I'm really good at is networking. Very, very good at that. And so,
yeah, and that probably helped you in the financial planning area. And then you were like, oh, well, how is this applicable to everything else you do? Right.
And it's helped there. And it's really helped here. You know, guys ask, how do you get these incredible people on the podcast? Because I'm a really good networker. I know how that works. For whatever reason, I know how that works, and I like it. And I don't need to explore why that is right now, although I do know, but it is what it is. So, okay. Well, there's some people who are not good at networking. And the people who are asking you questions, by the way, this is a great indicator. If somebody's like, hey man, like I'm trying to build this thing, and my world would be like, hey, I'm trying to build this podcast and you've had some incredible people on, like, how did you do that? That's a flag. That right there is an indicator that people are looking to you for some guidance and expertise. It's hard sometimes to acknowledge what you're good at precisely because you're good at it. So you don't get it. You're like, well, everybody seems like common, aren't they? Right. Yeah. No, not totally. Everybody's like that. Not everybody has the soft skills you have, Kip. Not everybody has the networking skills that I do, but they want to learn, and they're eager to learn, and they're willing to invest. And so if people are asking you questions about expertise or knowledge or insight or information, and you see some reoccurring trends, then there might be something that you can do about that. So for me, it'd be very simple to build, and I'm not doing this right now, by the way, guys, so don't ask, but it would be very easy for me to build a course and say, hey, I've got 1,000 spots, and I'm going to teach you how to build an incredible network of high caliber men who you want to help and who will help you. And people would sign up for that, and people would pay for it. And that's an ancillary product to what I'm creating with the podcast itself. I'm just using that as an example. I'm not doing that. So don't email me about when the course is coming out. But that's what I could potentially do if I felt so inclined.
Mike Collins, words of advice for moving across the country for work with your spouse.
So look, I'm just going to challenge you here. Like, get more specific with your questions.
Yeah.
You got, like, guys,
like, what is it about moving across the country that is like the concern, right?
I could talk to you for 2 weeks about this subject, on what works and what doesn't, and what school and what church and what this and what that, and how, and 90% of it wouldn't apply to you. But maybe at some point I would hit the 10% that does. But why not just get straight to the 10%? Like specifically what? I don't know. Like, if you ask a general question about moving across the country,
is it because your spouse is upset with the idea?
Right.
She has concerns. How do you build confidence with your spouse that this is a great move?
Right.
How do I fill up my car with gasoline?
So as Mike, I think I'm not, Mike, I'm not trying to pick on you at all. I'm not sorry. Like, I'm trying to help you. Like, I want you to ask better questions so you can get better answers. So I'm not sorry about it. Just ask. And this goes for everybody. Just ask more specific questions and you're going to get a better answer. So generally, the best I can do to answer that question is, I don't know, be supportive of your wife, because it's going to be probably, I think, more challenging for a woman generally than it's going to be for a man, because we as men, like, I think generally, adventure. We're more willing to take and accept risk relative to our female counterparts. So that's important. Also with your kids, understanding their needs and their desires and how it's going to, be hard on them. And then also work on building a network. Get involved in organizations and tight-knit communities that are going to help you build your network out. So church is one. Find a gym near you that trains, whether that's lifting or racquetball or jujitsu. I laugh at racquetball. I'm like, whatever it is, like, find something that can get you some friends. That's really important. And then go out of your way to make sure that you are welcoming yourself into the community, not expecting other people to welcome you into the community. Although there will be some of that.
Go out of your way, meet people.
Right. When we moved here to Maine, I didn't expect people to welcome me. I expect like to welcome myself. When I walk into a room, I have to introduce myself, right? Like it'd be weird if you didn't do that. And yet when it comes to moving, people don't do that. They just kind of turn into little hermits and like, well, how come people aren't welcoming? Well, did you even introduce yourself? No. Okay. Well, they're as awkward as you are, so why not just go out of your way and look at it as an opportunity to invite yourself to things and outings and getting to know the neighbors. And instead of waiting for them to bring the cookies over, you make cookies and you bring it to them, and you're going to have a much better time. So look, I'm happy to answer that question further. I just don't know where to go with it. So guys, learn that lesson. More specific questions will warrant and garner more specific answers.
Jacob Butler, how do you communicate work-life balance with an employer? What are some tips for helping establish what you need in your life while also showing that you want to better the business as you're working for?
That's an interesting question.
I like it.
I do too. How to establish or communicate your work-life balance needs. I think you need to do it up ahead of time. That's important because if an employer comes to you, for example, and says, "Hey, Ryan, can you do this extra task?" and you have this boundary in place and you say no, because that boundary is in place, you might be looked at as not being a team player. A very small example. I had one kid. So my background is retail management. I worked at Journey Shoe Store when I was younger. I eventually went on to manage different Buckle clothing stores. And I had one kid.
And now manages store.orderman.com, which you could order all of your Orderman swag. So you don't manage it, but you oversee.
I like the segue. You're wrong, but I like the segue because Brecken actually manages the store. But I do appreciate the segue. I was very good. You were very good at that. There was one kid in particular. I can't remember his name. And when I started managing the store, he came to me and he said, "Ryan, hey, I want to let you know." And I let the former manager know, because I took the store over. I let the former manager know that I don't work on Sundays. And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, why is that?" And he said, it's a personal preference. I take my family to church and we look at that as a day of rest. And it was a spiritual reason. And
it's important to me.
It was important. That's what he said. He said it up front. And I said, "Oh, thank you."
Yeah.
Okay. So several months later, we had some staffing changes and we were short. So I went to him and I said, "Hey, I would like you to work this Sunday." And he said, "Oh, he's like, do you remember that conversation we had? I just don't work Sundays." He says, "I would love to help. And I respect that the position the store is in. And if it was any other day, I would certainly do that to help. But I've made a commitment that I don't work Sundays." And we talked about that. And he was right. Yeah. And at first I was like, "Well, like, are you a team? Like, that's what, like, what really like?"
Yeah.
But then I respected him actually for it. Because he communicated, it wasn't a surprise. It wasn't a shock. He communicated that boundary to me. And I respected him for that. And I think as a boss, if I didn't respect that and I was in his shoes, I would probably leave actually, because my boss didn't appreciate or respect. And I did honor that. I said, "You know what? You're right. You did. And I appreciate you telling me. We'll figure out what we need to do to have a workaround." So it is important that you communicate these boundaries up front and say what you will do and what you won't do. And then you have to stick by them, because you have to be a man of your word, even if it isn't convenient or comfortable for you or your boss. And there are going to be times where your boss is likely to ask you to do something that is going to infringe upon the balance you're trying to create in your life. And in that moment, that's really what you test, whether or not it's a boundary. That's really where the test comes in. And I'll tell you, if you waffle, he's going to walk on you.
Take advantage of it.
100%, because he knows you're not a man of your word and conviction. So go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm going to say, so if there's some things that you've identified, hey, I don't work evenings or I don't work weekends or whatever, I don't know what it looks like for you. Then you need to communicate those things now ahead of time and get out in front of it. So the conversation might go something like this: hey, Kip, I've been working here for a couple of years and man, I just love working here. But one of the things that I've really made a goal to do in 2022 is really to honor my other obligations that I have as well and try to find that right balance between working and being at home and present. My daughter has dance recitals Wednesday evenings. And so I committed to being to each one of her recitals. And so I just want to let you know out ahead of time that if anything comes up on Wednesday evenings, I just won't be able to attend because I've made that commitment. But other than that, just I'm excited to be here. I'm excited about what we're going to do this upcoming year. I just wanted to communicate that ahead of time so there's not going to be any issues if something like that happens.
Totally.
I think that's just a completely appropriate response, or not even a response, just a completely appropriate way to address things that are coming up. And this is the perfect time to do it. We're moving into 2022. So things change and you have goals, and just communicate it with your people. That's it.
I do think that there's an element here of how you show up at the company, and you getting your work done is critical as part of this, right? If you're the employee that's constantly dropping the ball, not honoring your commitments, and then you're like, oh, and I got this boundary, then it's just annoying, right? Then you're just like, you know what? Screw you, right? So you need to be the employee that's like, you're busting your ass, you're getting the job done, and you communicate a boundary. Every manager is going to be like, no problem, right?
Right.
And I get that some jobs are different, like where you have hardened shifts or whatever, but in a professional environment, like a career position, if an employee came to me and it's like, hey, I got this thing in the middle of the day, I don't care if he's the guy that honors his commitments and get things done. I don't care when he gets it done. He might get it done tonight. He might get it done before he leaves or whatever, right? Like if he's honoring his commitment, he's honoring his commitment. That makes it super simple. Now, I know that's not applicable to all types of positions, that require like shift work or whatever, but you have to have some integrity. You got to be on top of your game. You got to be contributing to the team. And it becomes really easy to honor any boundaries that you bring to the table.
There's a really good book on this subject called Lynchpin. And I think the subtitle is Making Yourself Indispensable. So maybe that goes in line with what you're saying, Kip, is make yourself indispensable by doing your work. And that way you get to set your own rules. Right? If the best player on the team says, hey, I'm not going to do that Wednesday night, and he's the best player on the team, the boss is going to make an exception for the best player in the team. I promise you. But that goes to your point. You got to be kicking ass in other fields before that happens.
Yeah, for sure. That's 2 books already today that I've written down. I don't know how
what was the other one?
These. The one, what was the other one in my notes here? Raising Modern Day Knights. I wrote that down too.
Yeah. Both really solid books.
Freaking more reading to do. Jeez.
Come on now.
All right. Lyndon Van Overbeek. What are some useful tips for staying efficient in life? How do you plan out your day-to-day expenses, monthly events for you and your family to plan accordingly? In the IC, we use the battle plan. Is there any resources you've utilized for finances, plans, events, and etc.? High speed, low drag, battle team velocity. A little shout out.
Yeah. I really don't use anything other than the battle planner. I mean, that's my go-to. I do use Google Calendar.
But
obviously
that doesn't do your scheduling, right?
No. Yeah. So I use Google Calendar. Actually, we've got a new product coming out in the next month or so. My wife and I were talking about it this week in Cancun. Actually, is a plan. I don't want to disclose all of it because I just don't yet. So, but it is going to help with this, so you can plan out your entire week in the 4 quadrants. So it's not just your battle planner, because your battle planner is your quarterly plan and 4 things you're going to need to do on a daily basis and tracking that. This one's going to be more of a weekly planner, and it's a weekly planner that I personally have developed in my own life. That's going to help you make sure that you have all the right pieces in all the right places, and you schedule 1 week ahead of time. So like me personally, I will go in Sunday night, map out my entire week, where it's what I'm going to be doing, what meetings I'm going to be having, when I'm going to do my workouts, when I'm going to jujitsu. I'll write it all down. And then what I personally do is I transcribe it over to Google which is the calendar that my wife has access to, and I'll just say office manager, because we haven't yet like fully locked down a title, but our office manager handles. So they both have access to my calendar. They can go in there and put events and they can see what I have going on. And it's a very efficient way of doing things, like specifics, like managing money, there's budgeting software and tools. I don't need to get into that. I think you could just find one. We use QuickBooks, and I don't even do that at this point anymore. We have a bookkeeper who manages that. Occasionally she'll reach out and, ask about certain items or whatever that she needs clarification on. But we also hire professionals, like I have a financial advisor. It's not me. I hire somebody to do that. I have a CPA. I hire somebody to do that. I have a fitness coach. I don't spend time thinking about and programming my own workouts. Not only do I not have time for that, I'm completely unqualified to do that. So I have somebody who, when we were working out down there in Mexico, you saw, like, I'm pulling up my app.
You had a regiment.
Right. Like, I don't think about that. Like, I don't have time to think about that. So I bring the right people in. And if I want a workout program, find a workout program. I use my friend Josiah Novak. You can reach out to Josiah, or you can find something online that's $20. Like, it's all there. You just got to find and plug those holes. But the better you can get at thinking less about the stuff and just executing, the better off you're going to be. That's efficient. I don't want to spend a bunch of time thinking about things. I just want to do things. And that's why when I've got Brandy as our office manager, podcast schedule, logistics, the person planner,
actually getting shit done. Yeah.
Right. She's behind the scenes, like, okay, you're going to be in Texas. You're going to be in California. Here's your agenda. I booked your flights. Here's where you're staying. You're going to do a meetup on this night, and here's where it is. And I just send the guys to my email address, and then she handles that. And then I just get to show up. So her work to me is invaluable, and it's hyper efficient because, and this is not meant as a slight at all, but like, she's not going to be the one that shows up. She's not going to be the one doing the podcast. That's me. I'm going to be doing that, but she's doing the behind the scenes work, and we work very well in that capacity. And that's maximum efficiency for both of us. She's efficient. I'm efficient. So we work together.
Copy. There you go, Landon. Byron Pierce. I often hear some influencers talk about cutting ties with people who don't help us grow. Should we put ourselves around others that don't benefit us so we can benefit them and help them grow? What's a healthy balance of helping others grow while we grow?
Yeah. I mean, this takes a bit of a nuanced thought, because you will hear a lot of, I've said it too. It's like, cut those people out of your life. I don't think any person actually means, well, like Bedros is a great example. Bedros Koulian is somebody who's hyper successful. He's got a ton of different businesses. He's doing a lot of different things. He doesn't mean when he says cut those people out of your life, and I don't even know if he said that, so I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it's clear that he spends time with high performers. Like, he deliberately and intentionally spends time with high performers. I don't think he would ever say like don't offer a hand or extend help. Like, I know he's huge into Shriners. He does a lot of
his mission is to help people, right?
Of course. Yeah. But also, and I'm not going to speak for him because I don't know, but I'm going to speak for myself. Like, the people that I strive to help, they're not necessarily in my inner circle. Okay. Like, they're not coming to Mexico with me. They're not
in the bigger circle house somewhere else.
Right. And that's fine. That's good. So I have this over here. There's even guys that I love, like guys that I train jiu-jitsu with. Some guys are closer and they're my friends and they come to dinner and they spend time with me and my family. And other guys, I see them 2 to 3 nights a week when we train, and that's it. So nobody's saying ever like cut everybody out of your life who isn't serving you in some way. No, just be more deliberate and intentional about how you spend your focused one-to-one time. I think that's what people are saying. But yeah, totally. I still go to jiu-jitsu. I still hang out with people that aren't necessarily in my quote unquote inner circle, or I wouldn't necessarily go on vacation with. So yeah, again, nobody's saying cut everybody out of your life. That's more of a nuanced thought. And I think we need to really, really be careful with taking these broad, I know I make broad sweeping comments, like homeschool your kids is another one. Like, that's a broad sweeping comment. Well, what if I can't? Okay, well, yes. I'm not saying that immediately you should quit your job or your wife should quit her job and you guys should be destitute so you can homeschool your kids. Like, I don't think I need to explain that. When I say homeschool your kids, I'm saying if you have a desire to do that, if you have the capacity to do that, if you want to work towards that because you're not in the position now, then work towards that. I'm not saying everybody
you're pretty much
immediately,
saying
instantaneously
there's major value.
Yes, that's all.
You're pretty much saying there's major value. You should be considering it.
Right. Yeah. Social media is very interesting. I love it, but it's made for a less nuanced approach to things. And so I'll say that. So like, let's take the homeschooling example. I'll say that. And then people will say, well, then you should just explain there's nuances. I got 140 comments to make or characters to make a point. I'm not going to explain every little circumstance or exception or situation where what I said isn't accurate. I'm going to trust that you're an intelligent person who can discern, who can exercise some level of critical thinking and know that, yeah, there's exceptions and it doesn't apply to everybody. And no quote unquote influencer like you're talking about is saying, if they aren't a high performer, then they're losers and they don't belong anywhere in your life. Nobody's saying that. Nobody. So to your question, there's some compartments of life. Certain people get access to certain compartments of my life, and certain people get other access to other parts of my life. And that's just what it is. And it's okay.
So I've been fighting to look for the opportunity for the reference to jiu-jitsu. I have the perfect scenario. and this crosses my mind sometimes because people always think, we've talked about what makes a good jiu-jitsu black belt. And sometimes we not joke around, but we use the analogy, but by the time you get your black, you've been beat up and humbled so many times that like you're now prepared, right, to be one. Mm-hmm. But there are times where you get a black belt that probably shouldn't be a black belt or doesn't have the ideal personality type or haven't been humbled and full with pride. The difference is they didn't maintain good training partners that were better than them. And so that's a good example. Like if someone's going to start a jiu-jitsu school and all I'm training is with my students, that's a potential problem, right? I need to go to another school to find other black belts, or I need to have black belts in my school to beat me up and to constantly push me. If I don't, you can see an where I might get a false sense of like skill, or I might get overly arrogant, or I might get some ego because who's testing me? My students. So this is a good example where, hey, I'm there to serve my team and to serve my students. But for me to do that really well, I need to have that inner circle of people that are better than me to constantly push me and make sure I'm improving. So those circles serve each other is ultimately what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I think that's a great example. And then there's another question that, begs to be answered here is if you're the one who's not as good as everybody else. So let's just, in the world of jiu-jitsu, say, you've been training for 8 years and you're a high level purple or a brown belt, for example, and you want to spend time with all the black belts. And this is just an analogy, guys, so stick with me on that. You might think to yourself, well, what value do I add to the black belts? Or how do I get invited to the black belt table or the black belt training? I'm just a purple belt. I'm just a brown belt. Okay, there's still value that you can add. Here's a couple of things. Number one, you better be a kick-ass purple belt or brown belt because you better challenge them. There's ways that you can challenge them. Even though you're not a black belt, you better be able to challenge them in unique and interesting ways. That's number one. Number two, I think that a lot of black belts, and again, we're just using this as an analogy, are interested in helping the browns and purples because they know what it was like to be there, and another black belt helped them up the path. But don't expect them to take it easy on you either. They shouldn't.
Yeah.
So I think about, again, I'm coming back to this trip we just had last week. Bedros is a black belt compared to me in the world of marketing and business. So like, why would he spend time with me? Like I've asked myself that question. Why would he spend time with me? 2 reasons. I try to add as much value to his life as possible. I try to introduce him to people. He's going to be doing one of his Squire programs out here in Maine. So I made this place available to him and his team, and I'm going to accommodate them and try to put together a kick-ass event so that they feel the value and they see how much I care about what they want to do and how much they want to win. And also, I think he probably sees, again, I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, but he probably sees some level of potential in me, and it makes him feel good to help a budding entrepreneur who has potential to grow into something. Maybe he sees something in me that I might not even see in myself. And both are elements of value for him. That's why he would spend time with me. That's why he would come down last week and spend time with us when he doesn't need to do that. Like there's not like almost nothing that I could give to him. And yet there's still value to be had and still value that I can share in his life. So if you want a seat at the black belt table, you better be working on becoming a black belt caliber type individual, whatever that black belt looks like, whether it's fitness or actual black belt or business. You work on becoming that person, you'll get a seat at the table.
Keith Dyer, best ways to communicate with the ex-wife who cares nothing about you, but you share 3 kids together and makes a jab at you any chance she gets.
I've never been in this position, but what I would say is that, and what I've experienced is that people who like to poke and jab and make comments like you're talking about right now, I don't know the dynamic between you and her, usually seems like in my experience do it because they like to get a rise out of you.
Yeah.
And so if they don't get a rise out of you, then it no longer becomes compelling. And in fact, I would argue that the more of a rise that she gets out of you, the less mature you are. And she probably gets off to some degree on that. Yeah. If you learn to become a more mature man, I think not only is she going to see that it doesn't get a rise at it. And I'm not even saying be defensive. I'm saying like, let it slip off your back. Like you didn't even acknowledge what she said. Not only is it not going to be as compelling for her, but you actually probably would garner some respect, even to a slightest degree, maybe even to begin with. And then 10 years down the road, you do this and you guys might have, believe it or not, an amicable relationship. But every time she pokes at you, because what she's doing, again, I don't know her, I don't know your situation, but if I'm guessing based off the 20 words you just shared with me, I think probably what she's doing is she's testing for weak spots. You know, it's like in Jurassic Park where you have the wire, the electric fence up, yeah, and the dinosaurs, the raptors, yeah, are like testing on different parts of the fence to see what's electric and not. That's what she's doing. Yeah. And she's testing the fence. And every time she does, she finds a weakness, a flaw, a chink in the armor, because you're the one exposing it. This is why I don't like the word vulnerability, by the way, is because this is what's happening. You're exposing vulnerabilities. So stop it. I'm not saying be defensive, because that is viewed as a vulnerability. Just don't even acknowledge it. You know, like when I have a fly land on my arm that's bothering me, I just kind of like brush it. I don't even know I'm doing it. I just kind of like, oh, there's a fly on me. I brush it off. You don't even acknowledge it anymore. If a scorpion on the other hand stung me, I'd give it some attention, right? Because it actually hurt, might be poisonous. She's a fly. Just brush it off. Okay. And also you have 3 kids together. So you should probably figure out a way to do that so that you can actually spend time with your kids and be with your kids and not let that get in the way. And maybe again, garner some trust and credibility with her so that you can actually see your kids and she's not working behind the scenes to do it. She might be, I'm going to say it, frankly, a manipulative bitch. I don't know. She might be that. So don't play the game. She knows the game better than you. She knows the rules because she created the game. So do you get on the board with her and start playing her game? Or do you say, I'm not interested in playing that game and I'm going to play my own game over here with my own rules and I'm not going to get sucked into hers? And that's what you're doing right now. 98% sure that's what you're doing right now.
For sure. Yeah. The only other things I would add to it is, one, keep the mission in mind. Yes, no one ever like convinced anything what's best for their kids by insulting and overreacting to an insult, right? Like your game is your kids. So keep that mission in mind. How do you take the higher road? How do you figure out, how do you work the situation?
Kip, let me say something on that one.
Yeah.
Before you do the others, because I really like that. So if she's got a game where she's trying to poke at you and find little vulnerabilities and chinks in the armor, your game should be, I'm not going to let her show, I'm not going to expose any of my vulnerabilities. And you can make it a game too. I've noticed this with social media, because I know when people send me comments, like off the wall comments, random things, nasty things, they want a rise out of me. And I know that when I don't give them a rise, they keep poking, and I can see it. And I'm like, cool. Every time I ignore them, it pisses them off even more. And that's the game I'm playing. I like it. I like to see it, because they're like, shit, he's not responding. Oh, they try something else. Oh, he's still not responding. And then eventually they leave you alone and they go away.
Yeah, they learn that it's not going to work. Yeah,
exactly.
So keep that mission in mind. Here's the other thing. Two other things. First off, you think that retaliation of some sort might make you look good, and it doesn't. It doesn't. So if you're sucked into caring what other people think. So for instance, let's say she's doing stuff on social media and you're like, I'm going to retaliate and I'm going to make a post and copy my friends. You look like a dipshit. So stop it.
You look like a
higher road. Yeah. Don't do the reaction thing. Trust me. I know some guys that are like throwing their garbage all over the internet because they think it makes them look good. It doesn't. It makes them look like children.
And she knows that she still has your balls in her purse.
Totally. Yeah. Like, so stop that. Right now, here's the superpower. And I wanted to say empathy. So maybe Ryan, you have a better word for this. It's not empathy, but get clear on human behavior. Like that's like the superpower here, to go, why is she always acting like this? But actually follow that thought through a conclusion. Oh, why does she do this? Oh, because when she does this and she gets a reaction, it makes her feel validated in the fact that our marriage has failed, and she's looking for reassurance that she's correct and that this was the best thing for her. Whoa, you get to that mindset where you understand why she's playing her game a little bit and maybe psychoanalyze her. It really gives you some power to deal and not to overreact and go, oh, I see. And for me, at least in my past, that has given me empathy, almost to the point where I get it. I don't agree with it, and I don't think it's good and all these other things, but I understand the human behavior of what's happening, and it allows me to deal with things way better, because now I realize that it's probably not a direct attack, right? That it's something deeper and these other things. And that will really, really help.
I think that's awesome. I don't know that I would use empathy. I mean, maybe empathy is derived from it.
Yeah,
so I was thinking about that because
you're
asking.
What I'm saying?
100%.
Yeah, I don't know if the right word, but.
Well, I wrote a couple of things down here. Number one is just a mature thought. Like, for example, I can't remember exactly what happened. When we were flying home, my son was really upset because he wanted a snack in the store. And I said, no, you're not getting a snack. We just had lunch. Like, you're going to get some peanuts or whatever on the plane. Like, I'm not going to buy you a snack at the thing in the airport. And like a mature person would have said, okay. And that's it. Well, he's 5, so he's not mature. So instead, he started crying, like literal tears, like rolling down his face, crying, and he was upset and he was being mean to everybody because he didn't get like gummy bears at the thing. Okay, that's immaturity. And then there's also a level of just being a reasonable human being, and immature people can't. My 5-year-old can't be a reasonable human being. Quite literally, his brain has not developed to the point where he can
capable.
be.
Yeah.
Right. So, but that's you. By the way.
Yeah.
That's you. The only difference is that you can change that. Like you're not bound by your biological constraints of your brain. So here's the answer. Here's what I think the word is: detachment.
Yeah.
Just detach. It may not be even personal, but you can't think that unless you're detached from the environment. And conscious thought is pretty amazing. Like we can, if I wanted to think about this conversation, not from the conversation I'm having from you, but the way somebody else might perceive it, which by the way is part of my job because we're doing a podcast for other people. I have to be conscious about that, which means I have to detach myself. I might say, oh, we're amazing. This conversation, where, oh, look how good we are at this, Kip. But that might not be true because other people get to decide what's amazing and what isn't for themselves. And so I have to detach to be able to acknowledge, which means that maybe we aren't as amazing as I initially thought we were.
Totally. Yeah. And we're meaning making machines, right? Like I'm not like, this has happened so many times in my past where I've gotten a text message or an email or whatever from the ex-wife, and what the crap? And I'm fired up and I'm pissed off. And I go to Asia and I'm like, oh, can you believe this? And blah. And she's like, let me look at it. And she reads it and she's like,
what's your problem?
I think she's just asking when the boys are planning for Christmas. Like,
Right.
I don't see what you saw in that at all. Right. And something triggered me. And then literally, if I'm like logical and I read it again, I'm like, oh yeah, actually I shouldn't be mad. So be mindful of that too. Like you have your own story that you're running, and to your point, you need to detach and realize what's what. So,
or even look, let's take your example. Even if she was being that way to you, like she's trying to get at you.
Yeah.
Still detaching is the right answer. It's like, oh, here she is.
Yeah, I get her.
Being this way again. I got it. Like she's probably having a bad day, or she's probably, in an argument with her husband or whatever. And so like she's taking that on me. And so like I could either, sometimes you just kill them with kindness. And I've tried to kill people with kindness, even out of like to get people, and it still works. Like, I'm going to get him back. And so I'm going to be really nice to him. And actually one thing I've had happen is like a troll will say something. I had this happen not too long ago. Some troll said something. I don't even remember what they said. And I was very respectful back. And I said, hey, look, I see where you're coming from. Like, I don't agree. I can see how you would come to that conclusion. And so like, I wish you all the best, man. No worries. No hard feelings. All good. 3 months later, I get a message from this guy. And he's like, hey, Ryan, I wanted to explain something to you. And I'm just paraphrasing here. He said, I said something pretty mean on one of your posts. This is not going to happen all the time, by the way. But he said, I said something kind of mean or something on one of your posts. And you responded very graciously. And he said, I remembered that. And I wanted to just apologize. I was going through a really dark time. And I was taking it out on not just you, but other people. And you responded really graciously. And so thank you. The end. That was it.
Humanity. I love that.
So I just messaged him back. And I didn't say, powerful. Well, F off, or well, screw you, or well, you should have thought about that more. Maybe next time. No, I said, hey, man, no hard feelings. I really appreciate you reaching out to me. And I'm sorry you're going through what you're going through. I hope you're able to work it out. If there's anything I can do to give you some guidance or counsel or help, just let me know. And I don't know, nothing ever came of it, but like, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
All right, brother. We better wrap it up today. You got a busy day. I've got a busy day. So does everybody else listening to this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we talked about a couple things, but I think the key things are the Iron Council is still officially open.
No, it's
I'm
closed.
Looking for a nod from you. It is closed.
It's closed.
The ship has sailed. So it is closed. However, if you didn't get in, you weren't able to join us this go around, go to orderman.com, sign up for the newsletter, follow Mr. Mickler on the socials, Twitter and Instagram, stay connected with us. So then that way, when we open that back up, you can then act accordingly and join us within the Iron Council. To learn more about the Iron Council, you can do so by going to orderman.com/Iron Council. And to follow Mr. Mickler on those socials, it's Ryan Mickler on both Twitter and Instagram. And check us out on YouTube too.
Right on.
Anything else?
All right, guys.
How about the store? Are we don't order anything for Christmas? It's too late. Maybe
no, it's not too late.
Update there. Okay.
Anything after the 20th is not guaranteed to get there before Christmas. But if you get it, I think if you get it this week, We're going to get them all shipped out. We're working hard. Brecken and I, my son and I, are working hard to get that to you. He's got a new podcast that's going to be launched on January 1st. So stay tuned for that. We'll let you know. But yeah, that's about it. Check out the Iron Council.
That's
Check out
days,
the store.
Guys.
Yep.
7 days, right. store.orderman.com.
Yep. That's it. All right, brother. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you as well. We will be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be. All right. That's a wrap.